Hey everybody, my name's Josh and welcome to Lemon Blossom Farms. Today's video is going to be all about chickens in your local backyard. How you can raise them, what it takes to raise them, tips on raising them, and let you guys know how absolutely easy it is to raise chickens in your own backyard. Stay tuned. So today I just wanted to start out with a quote. Muhammad Ali, the boxer, once said, "Even the greatest was once a beginner. Don't be afraid to take the first step." And that's what this is actually all about here. That's what Lemon Blossom Farms is all about, is getting and encouraging people to start making that first step to changing their life. And I don't want to sound dramatic, but that life may be just something simple as having stuff growing in your backyard. Starting chickens, or maybe you are wanting something more where you can move up and expand your world to more self-sufficiency, or if you want to start a business where you sell produce or chickens or flowers, where you grow trees, whatever that may be. This is all about empowering you to do that first step. So today I wanted to talk about the aspect of raising layer chickens in your backyard. Layer chickens are crazy easy to do. We have had them for 6 years now. We started out with 4. They were New Hampshire Reds, and they were brown egg layers. They're a very docile breed, and we really enjoyed having them. And we still have one left. It's been 6 years now. We lost one to a hawk. We lost one we lost one to being egg bound, and then we lost another one to being a possum. Come here. I know. You see squirrels, don't you? You've learned about squirrels. So after the 4 we had for a year, we got 4 Cucamarans. They're a French hen. They're actually a hybrid bird. There are means that they can be used for laying, or they can be used for meat. So our French hens are pretty big birds, and they are rather solid compared to most layers. Most layering birds are pretty small, but we don't use ours for hybrids. We use ours solely for eggs. So we had those. They are a docile breed, so we had struggles introducing them, even though the New Hampshire Reds that we had are very docile themselves. There is still a pecking order amongst birds, and they were pretty big. They were a little too laid back, and one of them got beat up a little too much in the pecking order and didn't make it. So we have 3 Cucamarans. They lay some very pretty brown eggs. And after that, the next year, we moved into this home that we're in now. So our first house was a pretty small yard, a little more than 1/3 of an acre. This yard now is 3/4 of an acre, but most of it's in the front. So our backyard's still around, I'd say around 1/4 of an acre, give or take some very large oak trees. So when we moved into the new place, we had the slightly larger yard. We decided to get a few more birds, and we'll go into why that is more in a little bit. But we got our next batch of birds were golden comets. Golden comets are a very heavy laying breed, and we had 4 of those, and those birds do very good. They do not lay as large of an egg, but they are very heavy producers. So we'll get at least an egg a day out of them, sometimes in a week, in a 7-day span. We'll get 8 or 9, sometimes even 10 eggs out of them. They'll lay sometimes multiple eggs a day. After that, we got Easter eggers the next year. Easter eggers are not a production bird. We usually focus on production birds, but Easter eggers were kind of more of a fun bird at that point, and they lay a variety of colors. Ours do these light lavender blue, and then we have one that lays like a green egg. After that, we actually did a batch of meat birds, so I'm not going to talk about them in this video because this one's all about layers. So meat bird videos coming soon. But we went this year and we got 4 Plymouth Blue Rocks, which are a gray style hen, and then we have 4 Rhode Island Reds, which are another more classic laying bird. They are, let's see, 10 weeks old now, so about a few weeks we'll introduce them into the main flock. They're in a mobile tractor in our backyard right now, but once they get a little bit bigger, we'll introduce them into the main flock, and then they'll be upgrading into a new home as well. So we'll have 19 birds at that point. So their coop needs to go up in size a little bit, get a bigger run. So that summarizes our chickens. And so I'll start talking about kind of what we have now for why we do it and what works for us. So we have 2 coops. We have a mobile chicken tractor, which is getting upgraded soon. And then we have our regular coop and run setup. So the coop and run is where the grown birds stay at. They have 2 laying boxes in there. And then we also have the mobile chicken tractor, which we started using for our broilers, Cornish crosses, and we upgraded that to use for, not upgraded, but we also use that for when we get new layer birds. All of our birds that we have for laying are hens. We do not have any roosters. We live in a neighborhood and I like a little more space. If we get a rooster, they're good for defense, and then again, if you want to start hatching your own eggs, you gotta have a rooster. But other than that, some tips and information for you: chickens will lay eggs without a rooster. So they do not require a rooster to be around to lay eggs. Common misconception with that. Hens are just like most other females in the world, whether it's a human or a dog or anything else. They basically carry an ovulation cycle. I'm not a biologist, so I can't get into too much details because I don't know. But they basically have an ovulation cycle where they put an egg out. They do theirs every day though, so a little bit different than like mammals and stuff. But roughly there is a set number of eggs in that chicken, just like there is in most females and call females that I'm aware of. And so eventually your chickens will stop laying eggs. So keep that in mind. This is why we get, about every year, we'll get a new set of hens. And that's because the ones from the prior years will start to reduce. So I'd say we're down to 1 New Hampshire now. So that was 6 years ago. But lifespan for a laying part of a bird's life, say lifespan, the time period for laying is usually around 6 months is when they'll start. Depends upon the breed, but 6 months is average. And then they'll lay until about 4 to 5 years. Sometimes birds will continue to lay past that, but it is not it's usually at a very reduced rate. You're talking sometimes maybe an egg a week, if that. So we don't replace ours, we get new ones every year. None of our laying hens ever get used for meat, like I said earlier, mostly just because they're not that strong of a bird. They're not that meaty of a bird. Our Kookamarans are about the closest thing we have. They're a solid bird, but even then, we just don't have a need for it because we raise our own broilers. So for that, the care that's involved in making sure you get good laying is, first off, a safe place. So your coop should be pretty solid. It doesn't have to be fancy. The first coop I built was literally out of just scrap plywood I had sitting around, 1/2 inch thick. It wasn't even treated. It was actually just regular construction grade, something like you'd use in a house here. And so it didn't last for very long. It lasted for a good year, but after that year I saw that it was starting to weather and degrade, so I went and built a new coop for them. So the coop they're in now, it's roofed, it has a large run, it has large cooped area with nice roosting bars in it, so our girls get plenty of space to roam around. Your coop has a certain amount of things that it needs for size and space, so that's based off per bird. Off the top of my head, I don't remember what those numbers are, but I'll put them right there to tell you what those are. And so if you start to build your own coop, which I highly recommend, you can use those numbers to base off how big of a coop you need to have based upon the number of birds that you have. What else? So your coop should be solid, should give your birds protection. The coop itself should be made out of some type of sturdy material. Plywood's the most common. You are welcome to use treated, marine grade, or regular if it's going to be out of the weather and you're going to paint it. That's fine too. Then the rest of your coop, for your wiring, I always recommend 1/4 inch hardware cloth. That's because chicken coop wire isn't that great. We initially put chicken coop wire on our chicken coop back there, and it is it's worn and it's rusting in spots, and we actually had a possum get in, maybe a raccoon, I'm pretty sure it was a possum, and actually ended up killing one of our chickens. So I always recommend using strong, sturdy stuff. 1/4 inch hardware cloth is probably the most universally accepted as being the best. That's what's on our chicken tractor we keep going around our backyard. Your coop also needs to have roosting bars in there. Chickens like to roost at night, and they get up high and elevated, and they sleep up there. And then a laying box. Food. So food and water should always be readily available to your chickens. We keep ours with 24/7 access to food, so it's not too big of a deal. If you're trying to minimize cost to maximize production, you do not have to give them 24/7 feed access for production. So that does not mean 24/7 access to that food, that just means giving it enough. One way to find out is to start out giving them 24/7 access to food and then reduce that number until the chickens cut back on production. When you notice egg production starting to go down, then that's the amount that you're at right there, where you need to make sure you don't go below that. So this is the feed that we have that we give our chickens. You can tell it's crushed, chopped, ground, flattened, there'll be all kind of stuff to get it to process. But it's whole corn. You can see little bits of corn pieces in there. It also has soybeans and a variety of other seeds that have been chopped and crushed. And then there's supplements in here as well for calcium and vitamins, minerals, micronutrients, and stuff like that. So this is the feed. Like I said, there's the other two types are pellets, which is stuff that's similar to this, but crushed, packed into a pelletized form. And then there's crumble, which is stuff like, kind of like this, but it's even finer chopped, and then that's kind of chopped into a crumble-like form. These are some of the treats that we give our girls, cackleberry nuggets. We are not sponsored by whoever makes these, Farmer's Helper, but they do great for little treats for our chickens. These have some fruits and stuff like that mixed in there with them. Water, 24/7 access to water no matter what. Chickens drink, especially summertime, they'll drink a lot, so make sure that you give them plenty of clean water. There's a lot of different ways that you can give water to your chickens. Treats are another thing. Scratch is probably the most common for chickens. Scratch is just a combination of soybeans, and sometimes they'll put different seeds in there, sunflower seeds and stuff like that. If you notice your chickens starting to have thin eggshells, one of the most common issues is that they need some calcium supplementation. Me personally, I change feed if I notice that. We've been on the feed that we're running for quite a while now, about 2 years, and we have zero issue with that because it has a small calcium supplement in it. But if you're feeding a commercial brand where you notice the issues, feel free to throw in some crushed oyster shells. You can find those in a lot of your feed stores, and just give them free access to it. Chickens will eat and go through those as needed. You can also offer your chickens grit. Grit is small rocks and stones, and that's because they use that to help aid in digestion of stuff, and the grit helps break down that food inside their organs. Again, I'm not a biologist, so I can't get into exact details, but stomach and gizzards and all that I'm vaguely familiar with, and so it uses those. A couple other things with chickens, they are not herbivores. Please do not feed your chickens only plant matter. Chickens are omnivores by nature. They eat plants and they eat meat. I say meat, mostly bugs. Chickens love bugs, grubs, worms, and they also even go for things like mice. They'll go for snakes, lizards, stuff like that. A lot of times it's for fun and play, but they will eat that as well because they are an omnivore by nature. So other treats we give our chickens on that topic is mealworms, and we'll let them free range and they'll go through our beds and stuff, get the grubs out. Ticks are another one they like to eat. Chickens are very smart, so they are the closest direct descendant to a T-Rex. I think I heard that we have walking on the planet now. So chickens are pretty intelligent creatures. They can figure out a lot of different things and ways to get to stuff. Summertime, down here in the south, it gets very hot, very humid, and so our chickens need to stay cool. Plenty of air and fresh air in their run should be available, along with shade to keep them from getting too hot. We also will occasionally freeze things and then put them out there. So ice cube trays that we put corn nuggets in, and just corn kernels, and then we'll fill it up with water and then occasionally throw it out there. That'll give them something to entertain themselves with and also give them a cool treat to go for. Chickens are territorial, so they typically don't like things messing with where they lay their eggs at. You'll see videos where the girls will go after things that come and mess with their nest. So keep that in mind if you get a broody hen, which is a hen that likes to lay on her eggs to attempt to hatch them. You may have to start breaking that habit. There's a variety of different ways to do that. Save that for another video because they can get pretty in depth. Another thing is chickens molt. Molting is when they're dropping feathers, usually around a change in season. They'll grow new feathers back in. When they're doing this, rarely do they lay. So if you notice egg production cuts out, usually it happens wintertime. Don't freak out, that's normal. You can usually buy chickens in a variety of different ways. We get ours as day-old chicks, pullets or biddies, sometimes what you'll hear them called, and that's just a very young baby chicken. You can order them. There are places where you can order chickens from. Murray McMurray is one of them. There's lots of them out there, but just keep in mind as you go through, just select a good reputable chicken place to get them from. You can order them and then they will deliver them to your local post office. You'll get a phone call when they're in, and you need to make sure you're available and ready to go pick them up that day. Chickens, when they're first born, are usually good for 48 to 72 hours without food, and that's because the nature of when a chicken's born is to stay under its mother until all the eggs kind of hatch without going out and having to get food. So they are good for a few days, but then shipping and all that, it's a pretty traumatic and stressful time. So your goal is to get them back home under a heat lamp and availability of water and starter feed as soon as possible. I'll do another video on starting chickens. Again, it's a whole nother topic, but one that's very valuable. The other option for getting chickens is getting raised birds. So if you find somebody who's getting rid of their chickens, that's one way to do it. Or certain chicken suppliers will offer grown chickens. These grown chickens can be a variety of ages, but usually the generally accepted term is they're at least 16 weeks old. All their feathers have come in, and they're pretty much grown. They might have a little bit of more growing room to do, but their feathers are in, and they're a well-established chicken at that point. And then usually around 6 months is when they'll start laying. So you don't have too long before you're going to start getting eggs. Other than that, chickens are very easy. Like I said, fresh food, fresh water, and a safe place for them to stay at. Now, you don't need a run on your coop if your chickens are available to get out and run free roam, but always give them somewhere safe to come to at night to get away from predators. Other than that, Heat-wise, make sure they have access to water. You can also give them what's called diatomaceous earth and just free availability in like a pan or something. Chickens like to take a bath in that. It helps keep their feathers clean and helps keep them from getting bugs like mites and stuff like that. When you have your chickens during the winter, if you live in super cold climates, definitely make sure they have somewhere to go. That does not have to be heated. This past year, end of 2022, start of 2023, a lot of America got hit in a very cold spell. So that was something a lot of people were worried that their chickens were going to have issues. If you give your chickens shelter from wind and you keep them dry, chickens can withstand some insanely cold temperatures. For your coop, to help keep things dry, make sure you have some kind of layer in the bottom. We do pine shavings. Straw and hay are good options there. If your chicken coop starts smelling, it's time to clean it out. We clean ours out probably every 2 months. We'll take all the shavings out. We'll put them either top dress our beds if it's not too hot, or we'll put it over in the compost bin, compost pile, and let it run there for a few months to mix with high carbon stuff and help break the chicken manure down. It's very high, it's called hot, and usually it's high in ammonia, nitrogen, and stuff like that. Other than that, thanks for tuning in. This was a very basic video on keeping chickens. Just want to let you guys know that it is very easy. It does not take a lot of work. Don't get intimidated by it. Just enjoy, get you a few chickens. We always recommend starting out with 4. Chickens like to have company. They're not sole creatures. They're group birds. So they enjoy company of other chickens. If you start out raising them by hand and getting them associated with you to know that you are basically their food source, that you care for them, a lot of chickens will develop very strong bonds with their owners. And so they like to be out. They're very smart, like I said before. They will start to recognize your face, or if you come out wearing the same outfit, hats, maybe carrying the same colored bucket when you bring food out, they'll start to know you, and they'll get excited to see you. It's pretty cool. So enjoy chickens. If you have any questions, drop them down in the comments below. There is a lot to learn on them, but don't get intimidated. I'll say there's another quote I have, John D. Rockefeller. Pretty sure everybody knows at least who he is, has heard of him. Said, "Don't be afraid to give up the good to go for the great." So with us, we're a small backyard farm, and we raise a lot of our own food, and that comes from plants, vegetables, fruits, and then chicken eggs. We also do our own broilers. So it's capable of doing it in a small backyard. I'm always a person that I am very humble and grateful for what I have, but I'm never satisfied. I'm always looking for new stuff. What's going to make things better for me, what's going to make things better for my family. And so that's what we're kind of about here, is how to improve that process. So I hope you guys have a good day. Thanks for tuning in. Feel free to ask more questions, or ask any questions you have in the comments below. Like, follow, all those good things, subscribe. And we will continue to release more and help educate more people on how we do our process for having a farm in our small backyard. You guys have a great day, and we'll see y'all on the next one.